A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine. First of all, my apologies. We're running slightly late, which is my fault entirely for having left a previous shoot a little later than I could have, and then hit all sorts of afternoon traffic, which was annoying both because just sitting in traffic is annoying, but more so because today I'm hanging out with some of my very favourite people and a couple of new faces on the show as well, as we discuss an assortment of wine that makes up the next edition of the South African Wine Tribe. And if you're raising a quizzical eyebrow and saying, well, what on earth is the South African Wine Tribe? Well, you clearly haven't been watching this show enough, because it is the third edition of what is a great attempt by Greg Sherwood in particular, and Wines of South Africa, and myself, to either satisfy the well-versed palates of South Africans across Great Britain, or to teach the savages of those wild and untamed Brexit-pained lands that there is fabulous wine to be found from the bottom of the African continent. So we've got another great package together for what will be our third event. It runs next Wednesday, which is the 9th of December. And it features a great bottle of South African bubble, some super red, and a delightful South African wine from a guy who's been on this show a couple of times before. And all of those have been picked by Greg. They will be dispatched to you, and all for the cost of just £55. And you then get to join us on the show next week, a very special private Zoom session where Greg, myself, and the winemakers will talk you through those three wines, give you the tasting, and give you some very, very special South African treats sent from South Africa, but all run by Greg and his marvellous team at Hanford Wines. And a marvellous, marvellous team they are. So let's meet the heartbeat of Hanford Wines, who's an extremely familiar face. If he's not actually on the show, then he's annoying us with comments from one of his multiple homes around the UK. Greg Sherwood, a very good evening.
Hi, Dan. Great to be with you again. Down here in the depths of the Hanford cellar.
Which is where we find you regularly. Last time we spoke to you, there was a reasonably upbeat assessment on the volumes of South African wine flying out the doors of Hanford Central. Has that been a similar case since we last spoke?
Yep, absolutely. It's still going strong. We've just come out of lockdown yesterday into kind of a tier system. So London's in tier 2, so we can do a few more things now, and there are some kind of time limits and curfews, but home wine sales still very, very strong. A lot of the South African offering is as strong as ever. I think, as I said, some of the previous times, a lot of the wines people were introduced to during the full-on lockdown earlier in the year, that they're certainly kind of coming back and looking to explore similar or other, or rebuy a lot of these wines. So it's very exciting. And then we've had a lot of shipments arrive from South Africa that finally got out. A lot of things that would have arrived in August, September are now arriving October, November. So we'll be pushing out a lot of exciting wines, a lot of five-star wines, a lot of very highly rated allocated wines now for Christmas. So it's all very exciting. Everything's happening.
And the benefits of that are the wine drinkers of the greater island of Britain. And we will be dispatching some of that fabulous South African wine in the course of the next few days for people to join us next Wednesday. I remember when we started this idea together with Joe from Wines of South Africa, we weren't entirely sure if it would take off, but it sounded like a good idea for us at least to drink some South African wine. But I think the response has been pretty good, and it's been a nice endorsement of the esteem in which South African wine is held across the UK.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can see it in the orders that we manage. A lot of them are people who are doing repeat orders, so they're obviously very happy with the quality of the wine and the delivery and fulfillment of it. And they absolutely are very complimentary about all the winemakers and all the chatter on the show. They've said it's absolutely fantastic. An evening well spent, cracking a few bottles at home with the family. So it's gone down really well. And with all these things, I think we said it's important to get it up and running, get it started, and I can see the momentum building very nicely, and I can see it going from strength to strength in the new year. And I'm just thinking about which kind of exciting winemakers we can get on for the new year. But got a fantastic selection going into Christmas, so this little December tasting.
Well, your challenge for your winemakers for 2020 will be to match the quality of what you've come up with in 2019, both in terms of the wine, but also the great characters we've had. We've got 3 more of them today. A little later on, we'll be chatting to Ian Naudé, and we've done some wine with him before. And I know you two are very close friends, and you're a big fan of his wine, and correctly so. We're hoping we might get the Shannon King, Bruwer Raats, to come and join us as well. We're trying to track him down by fax machine at the moment. But we kick off with a staple for the upcoming break, and that is wine with a bit of fizz to it. You can go traditional and head over to France for champagne. The rest of the continent is littered with cavas and proseccos, but if you really want the real stuff, you come down to South Africa and some bubbles, and we go to an estate that gave us our very first Cup Classique many years ago, and the winemaker at the helm is continuing a wonderful tradition. So let's go and say hello from Simonsig to Carl Schoeman. Carl, a very good evening. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Hi Dan, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's actually a big week for me and Simonsig, because I know I've got Johan on the show next week to celebrate his Diners Club Winemaker of the Year award. I thought I'd ask you about that first up, though. Yes, he's won the award, but probably you did more of the work, because I know how these winemaking things go. But more importantly, what is it like for you to have that experience, to work with someone like Johan, to see day to day an expert in his field, and have that rubbing off on what you do?
Yeah, I must say it's amazing. Especially after my studies at varsity, I immediately started at Simonsig. So I was really young and inexperienced, and especially about Cup Classique, I didn't really know anything. So it was amazing to start under someone as experienced and willing to share as Johan. So it's really been amazing. And with the 2015 Kaapse Vonkel, which won the Diners Club Winemaker of the Year award with, obviously being part of the winemaking and and sort of sharing the award with him. It's amazing. I mean, the vibe at the winery is just awesome. Everyone's super excited, especially about next year. We've got the 50 years of Cup Classique coming up. So as Kaapse Vonkel started in 71, so I think the whole industry is just really excited, and probably quite fitting that Johan won on the year just before the 50th celebration of Cup Classique.
Well, it adds to the reasons for drinking plenty of it in celebration. Let me bring our friend from London here back into the conversation quickly. Greg Sherwood, if we have a look at Cup Classique in South Africa and then versus Cup Classique in the UK, we love it here. We know how good it is. How is it perceived, especially when there is such a tradition of drinking champagne, and also in the UK, a lot of Prosecco, a lot of Cava? And then from you personally, where does Simonsig sit as a brand that makes great bubbles?
So Dan, when I was thinking about what should we do for this last Christmas pack, I said, well, let's mix it up a bit. We get some bubbles, we get a lovely big dense red, and we get a lovely sweet wine. And hey, presto, we've got 3 of South Africa's strongest categories right there. Champagne style Method Champenois fizz. We're one of the greatest proponents outside of France. Obviously, our Bordeaux blends, and certainly our sweet wines are one of the greatest, highest scoring categories in South Africa. And so it's really a fantastic selection. So, if you had to said to me about 10, 15 years ago, what's the potential for MCC in the UK, I would have said, wow, it's a bit like sweet wines. People are drinking less and less sweet wines generally, maybe in the mass market. But and champagne, it's got everything wrapped up. But I have to say, in the last 8 years, South African MCC has made incredible inroads into the market here. And certainly a lot of that wouldn't have been possible with 2 people, specifically Johan Milan and Bubbles Ferreira. So Graham Beck and Simonsig, the 2 brands spearheading with incredible quality, good volumes, multiple price points across a fantastic quality. And Simonsig certainly has been one of the leaders there. And of course, 1971, great year, and my birthday. So it's a wine that's done really well for us. So we've just absolutely, funny enough, with this the one we've got in the pack, the Kapsel Rosé, has just absolutely taken the UK market by storm. Obviously, the straight Kapsel sells very, very well. One of the first, but we've been doing a bit of the prestige cuvée as well now. But featured the 2017 in Decanter magazine last year. That we've got the 2018 now. We've been tasting. It's just a fantastic wine, and I think all sparkling wine producers from South Africa should be appreciative of what Simonsig has done for the UK market and developing the category here. It's making the pie bigger for everyone here from South Africa.
High praise from the high priest of South African wine in South Kensington. Shall the wine that we are drinking, the 2018, give us an indication of what makes it really special for you, and what our members of the South African Wine Tribe are signing up for next week's edition can expect from it?
Yeah, so the Kapsel Brut Rosé is quite unique due to the presence of some pinotage. So the 2018 vintage, a blend of Pinot Noir, about 76% Pinot Noir, 24% pinotage. So obviously, pinotage being something unique. So obviously we do a whole bunch pressing on the Pinot Noir, so you get a really delicate, lightly colored base wine with lots of finesse, good fruit and structure as well. But especially from the pinotage, you really get a next level of intensity of fruit, and a really rounded structure and softer acidity, which actually works really nicely. So the 2018, you might remember, it was obviously in the middle of or towards the end of the real big drought. So we had very small yields, really few grapes on the vine, small berries, but so what was great about that is you had super healthy grapes, lots of intensity of flavor and fruit on the Cup Classique. So this Brut Rosé 2018, I think, is really showing so much primary fruit. You get the real strawberry, raspberry, and then you also get the some stone fruits, plums, peaches, and then we try and keep the freshness and the primary fruit, but then let the aging on the lees bring the complexity and the leasiness. So this one, for example, has been on the lees for 20 months. So yeah, definitely a nice balance between freshness and fruit, and then some secondary complexity.
Charles, is it something you've experimented with on? Because we see a lot of French champagne rosés coming out here. Some prefer to age them a little longer. Some like to get them to market very quickly. It just really kind of depends on the style. Have you found a kind of ideal aging on the lees for the rosé specifically? Because it is quite obviously for white, blanc de blancs and things. It's often the longer on crown cap on lees the better, obviously. But obviously commercial, you've got to sell the stock eventually. But for rosé, there can often be like an optimal. Have you settled on 20 months, or does it change per vintage, or how does it?
Yeah, so it definitely it's quite vintage dependent, but we do aim for a fresher style, slightly more primary on the rosé. So we found that after about 24 months and further, maybe. Personally, I love it because it's quite complex. Definitely showing a bit more of the toasty and biscuity and yeastiness. But for the market for which we produce the rosé, we believe the more primary flavors, and so we won't go to much more than 24 months.
Right.
On the Kapsel on the other hand. Due to the quality, Chardonnay has this amazing ability to really just develop in complexity and richness with age. So on the Kapsel on the other hand, we're really trying to build up some stock to extend our lease to maybe beyond 24 months. Obviously, you've got the financial implications as well, but yeah.
It's a wine that is a very worthy addition to your Christmas cellar, and I'm particularly having this. I love a gammon over Christmas. I think this is going to sit delightfully as both a preemptive strike and a companion. Charles, thank you very much for joining us. You're welcome to stay on board, but I know you're a busy man with lots of bubbles to make. But thank you for being part of the Wine Tribe, and we look forward to having your assistant Johan on the show with us next week.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks for having me. Great to meet all of you.
So there we go. Charles Schoeman from Simonsig, who gave us the very first Cup Classique in South Africa in 1971, which was exactly the same year that Greg Sherwood turned 10. So lovely to have that on our list for the South African Wine Tribe. It is the first one down. Let's move on to the second. And just before I welcome up another member of the winemaking aristocracy in South Africa, your choice for wine number 2, Greg Sherwood. You've invited Mr. Raats' wine onto our list, and very happily so.
So as I said, I thought let's end the year with a bang. 3 of our strongest categories, and our second category is Bordeaux blend. And Bruwer can tell you a story about this wine, but he's obviously best known for his obsession with Cabernet Franc, and then the extension of that into his incredible Emma de Compostela, which certainly will rank in South African annals of Bordeaux blends as one of the most famous, if not, along with the Paul Sours and the likes, and quality year after year. But this little wine's got quite an interesting story, and it's a fantastic Bordeaux blend. And Bruwer can tell you about the incredible awards and scores that it's just received recently. But I thought, seeing it's the 2017 and it's available in the UK now, it'd be great to profile it now for people for Christmas.
All right. Well, let's go over to Bruwer and leave the person stealing wine from Greg Sherwood. Bruwer, welcome. Lovely to finally have you on Dan Really Likes Wine. I feel like I've let the world of wine down by taking it quite this long, but lovely to have you on. And I need to ask you a question first up on an issue of nomenclature. You've called this wine the Jasper. Now, not that long ago, I had this really, really, really old guy called Jasper Raats from a place called Longridge making wine. Is there any connection between both him and you, and between this wine being called Jasper?
Dan, well, thank you for having us, and it's always an honor having Lord Sherwood from Pretoria also on the show. But yes, he happens to be my brother, and the wine was called after my father. When I started Raats Family Wines, he joined us as our viticulturist, and for 9 years, and then sadly, he passed away in 2009. So the vineyard for the Jasper was planted by myself and my dad. And then by the time we released the first wine in 2012, he sadly passed away. And it was always a Cabernet Franc Malbec blend. So unfortunately, he wasn't there, but we decided to call it after my father, Jasper Raats. But my brother, in good form, always goes on wine shows and tell everybody that my brother called a wine after me. And then I have this people coming over to my stand and say, "Oh, Bruwer, you're such a nice winemaker. You call a wine after your brother." So there is a relationship, but he's obviously a junior boy.
Well, I'll have to speak to Jasper, because he hasn't released the Bruwer to the best of my knowledge. So maybe he needs to get that done first.
Indeed, and as these Helderberg folk are, they always lag behind a little bit, so, but they will get there.
Well, he might lag behind. You set trends, and you do so consistently. Greg referred to the fact that we know you for making sensational Cabernet Franc and for Chenin Blanc that is so close to you, you even chose your Twitter handle after it. but you make so much other wine. How much of a challenge is it for you when you become so well known for making one or two varietals, as in the case of you, to remind people, you know what, there's actually so much more to me as a winemaker, and I can bring out, for example, a quite fabulous red blend?
Yes, I must say in my own defense, during the World Cup 2010, my US importer sent me a thing and said I must get onto Twitter. I had no clue what Twitter was. And they said, your handle is Shinnin King. And I sent the email back to them, and I've read it a couple of times. I said, nobody handles me, and there is no handler for me. I handle myself. I had no idea what the hell Twitter meant, to be quite honest. So when I got a bit more tech savvy and I tried to make a Twitter account, I realized it was already up and running, and I didn't have the password, and it was Shinnin King, so I just left it. So it was not done by myself, but I did not change it. I thought actually afterwards a lot of people complimented, say, that calling you not your name, but calling it something that's connected to you is actually quite cool. So it actually turned out to be quite nice. Dan, to answer your question, that when I started off in 2000, specializing in Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc, people really thought I was on some designer drug to specialize on the two most uncoolest varieties in South Africa, but probably in the world, So Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc was just really nowhere. I think, if you look 20 years down the line, our weakness, what was perceived to be our weakness, has become our strength. And focusing and just, putting all your effort in trying to achieve that, I think has paid off for us. It was definitely not the easy road to take, because I think the mindset in 2000 from South Africa was to make wines that was accepted in the international market. It was not so much to make wines that uniquely South African. Today we all know that it completely changed. We wanted to show what makes South Africa different. We don't want to show necessarily what makes South Africa similar. So eventually it definitely was the right decision, but it was tough. I mean, to sell Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc at a premium level in those early days were almost impossible in South Africa. Luckily, I exported, and that kept me going. Since about, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago, people have been coming to the farm here in Polkadrai to taste Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc, because they're interested in it, and they drink it, and they know of it. So things have changed a lot. The Jasper obviously was a point that I wanted to prove with Cabernet Franc, in that most blends they use Bordeaux style blends, they use Merlot or Cab, and so by using Cabernet Franc was quite different. Very few people use it as their main component, but I think what makes Jasper unique, not from a South African point of view, but from an international point of view, is the fact that I use Malbec in such high percentage as the backup for the Cabernet Franc. The current 17 is about 53 Cabernet Franc and over 30% Malbec. And I've asked so many people, if you know about people that uses Cab Franc and Malbec in such high percentages, but nobody have really told me of anybody else. So, Jasper is a very unique wine, except for the name that have some real meaning to us and our family. The fact that it's Cabernet Franc and Malbec in such high percentage is just makes it a very, very unique Bordeaux style blend. It was in the top 20 best Bordeaux blends in the world from Decanter earlier in the year. Sadly, it was announced the same day that they announced a lockdown, so it was a bit of the battery got wet. At least, it was last year Wine Magazine's second highest rated Bordeaux blend in South Africa. And, it's not necessarily expensive wine, but I think that combination between Cabernet Franc and Malbec, that beautiful softness and texture and elegance and precision that you have with Cabernet Franc, combined with Malbec, which is sort of bold and blackberry fruit and rich in the mid palate. It's almost like combining the beauty and the beast and getting the best out of both.
And that, I'd assume, Greg Sherwood, is why you selected this particular wine. There are so many great South African bread blends that you could have chosen, and you could have been lauded for many of them. But there's clearly something about this wine that said to you, you know what, Greg, this is the one I'm going to put on the list for our wine tribe for Christmas.
Yeah, look, Bruwer knows I'm a massive fan of MR de Compostela, the kind of big brother of this wine, and been shipping that and selling that since the maiden vintage in 2004. But the red Jasper, or just Jasper as it's called now, it's always been good. It's always been a great value wine, great kind of precision. But I think in the last year or two, it's certainly hit new heights. And I think with its incredible rating, as Bruwer said in Decanter magazine for the 17, a fantastic vintage, as we know. It's just, if people haven't tried it, I mean, wow, you're getting a hell of a lot of wine there for the money. And I think we've done really well with it. We sell a lot of MR in the shop, but we sell a lot of Jasper. And I think it's a great introduction to Bruwer's style. And, you know, as he says, you know, Franck is reaching new, it's turned the corner certainly 4 or 5 years ago, along with some other slightly less fashionable varieties, and even the Loire Cabernet Francs are hitting new heights. And global warming's been kind to the Loire, you know, certainly for the kind of slightly riper styles of Franc. And I think there's a lot of people who really enjoy the styles. But Malbec, wow, you know, we've talked about it. You know, Mike Radcliffe does well with Malbec in his Series M and in his Seriously Old Dirt. That would probably be the closest kind of comparison I could have to the Jasper with those big slug of Malbec. But boy, has Malbec found a home in the Cape. And I know a lot of Argentinians who are actually a little bit worried. So.
It's an inspired combination there, Bruwer. It's one we've got on our wine tribe for December, and one that we'll be introducing people to if they haven't already come across it. The wine itself is fabulous. What is Bruwer Raats drinking and eating together with this? If you're opening up a bottle, what's for dinner in the Raats household to match this perfectly?
Last night we had maybe I should answer this with when God created the earth, when he created everything, he created Cabernet Franc, came out of the system, then rosemary, and then lamb. So if you have lamb and you have rosemary with it, and you don't drink Cabernet Franc, you disturb the universe. And Dan, none of us want to do that. Not even Lord Sherwood would like to do that. So, you know, that is just, I try it every week, and I just to check if anything changes, and it doesn't. I can tell you once or twice a week I eat rosemary, lamb, and Cabernet Franc, and it just works. So that is just a magic combination. So that's all I have to say. Just go for that. You'll never get it wrong, and you won't disturb the universe.
You tune in to Dan Really Likes Wine for Wine, you end up getting a philosophy lesson from one of the great thinkers of modern times. I married into a Greek family, as you may know, and as a result, lamb is a regular feature in our kitchen. Leg of lamb, slow cooked for 6 or 7 hours. And Cabernet Franc does make a wonderful companion. And I think there are two things, and I think Greg will echo my endorsement of you here. Ken Forrester often gets the credit for leading the Chenin Blanc charge, and he has done a huge amount. I'll just never tell him that in person. But in terms of taking Chenin into that premium space, I think you've played a really big role. And Cabernet Franc, for me, is my favorite red varietal at the moment. I'm just loving drinking. I think we're doing great stuff with Cabernet Franc. But with all of these wines, it takes somebody to show everybody else, you know, we can invest some time, some money, some love into these grapes and take them away from just playing a small role in the background and turn them into either leading a blend in this case or as individual varieties. Both of those, you've done a great job. So you might need a second Twitter handle, Cabernet Franc King, and then Wine Philosophy King, maybe over on Instagram, just to complete the full house.
Lovely. No, that's great, and you know I must say that it changed very quickly, rapidly. You know, just not just in South Africa. I think there was just a switch, and people were looking for more wines that are more elegant and wines that have more complexity and wines that was refined. And I always said, and I maintain that, is that, yes, Cabernet Franc might be the most difficult variety to grow. It probably technically the most difficult variety to make in the cellar, but if you get it right, it's the most rewarding. And and that is definitely, people are starting to get that. And I always said, if you're a wine drinker, you might not start at Cabernet Franc, but any wine drinker that eventually drink quality wine will end up drinking Cabernet Franc.
And that is the very unbiased opinion of Professor Bruwer Raats from the Global Institute of Mass Cabernet Franc Consumption. And on that note, I might just add this particular wine here to my list of things to help me through this evening, which is a terrific wine made by Bruwer and his cousin Mzokana, and a wonderful, wonderful one is. Bruwer, thank you so much. Look forward to catching up with you again soon. We definitely need a longer session with you and try some of that single varietal Chenin and Cab. But in the meantime, enjoy both of tonight's legs of lamb, and thank you for conferring your wisdom upon us.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bruwer Raats, wonderful character, wonderful winemaker, wonderful entertainer, and a terrific addition, both in person and by his wine, to the South African wine tribe, which enters its third round next Wednesday in partnership with Wines of South Africa. Joe Waring and a wonderful team in the UK. So we've got bubbles from Simonsig, the masters thereof. They've been making it now since 1971, and Johan Malan recently made Diners Club Winemaker of the Year based on his mastery of bubbles. Bruwer Raats with his Cabernet Franc, heavily laden with Malbec red blend. The Jasper, which is named after Bruwer's father, if you ask Bruwer, named after his brother Jasper, if you ask his brother Jasper. Either way, it's a terrific wine. And then we've got our third and final category, and we head down to the Cape in just a moment. But before we do, you've given us a couple of fabulous introductions to this man in the past, Greg Sherwood, but I think it's worth reminding people because he won't do it himself. He is as modest a member of our wine community as we have. Explain to us why Ian Naudé is just such a rich part of the fabric of the South African winemaking tapestry.
I think probably actually I was just thinking about it. One of the reasons why Ian's so kind of key to the whole South African industry is because his influence has been so overriding, yet almost so unknown behind the scenes. He's like the ultimate operator in the background, mentoring the young, almost every young gun that's made five-star wine has probably run across Ian, and Ian's had a session or at Elsenburg or tastings groups, and he's helped the chap over the years. I mean, Ian's time is really, he spends probably half his time helping other people make better wine. And it's a good job that he makes some of the best wine in South Africa himself. And I've just been a big fan all these years. So to round out our third choice, I thought, well, sweet wines is just such an incredible strength of South Africa. And whether it's, noble late harvests, or whether it's just muscadels, or whether it's straw wines from Mullineux, or whether it's port styles from the Klein Karoo. But we've got we've got something a little bit more interesting. And the reason why I'm so mad about it is because is the exact reason why Ian made it. It's incredibly, incredibly drinkable. It's a sweet wine with freshness, and that you can actually polish off most of the bottle, if not the whole bottle, with some lovely cheese or some well-matched desserts. And I guess, sweet wines, get a bit of a bum rap. You drink too much through the whole meal, and you maybe just don't have enough space for a glass of sweet. But absolutely, something like this wine, with its freshness and its elegance, it's just the perfect end and accompaniment to your final dishes of an evening. And I'm so pleased that Ian kind of came up with it a few years ago.
Well, we're going to say hello to Ian in just a moment. Very quickly, a couple of comments coming in that I haven't had a chance to get to yet. Grant Sauls referring to our bubbles from earlier. I really enjoy the Satin Nectar Rosé. Always a tough choice between opening a Satin Nectar and the Bliss. Both are absolutely great. What's the problem, Grant? Open them both. It's not that difficult. And Goni Tizwa, great to hear, Greg, that SA Bubbles doing great in the UK, and Goni watching us on Facebook at the moment. And that is an important and a very welcome endorsement. Denzel Jonathan Swart simply saying, love that. I'm not sure if you're referring, Denzel, to the wine, to Bruwer's philosophy, to the fact that Greg is not wearing a second-hand rugby jersey. But whatever you're loving, we are glad that you are. And then Helen Nicholl, that youthful consumer of wine from Belfast, definitely going to keep my remaining Raats Cab Franc for the next leg of lamb. A terrific, terrific pairing. So too, as a pairing, Greg Sherwood with Ian Naudé. They go together delightfully. So let's head down to Stellenbosch to the maestro. Ian Naudé, welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine. And the first question I have to ask you, how are you feeling? Because you've been in the wars a little of late.
I'm feeling brilliantly, Dan. I think I've got my second chance in life. And I think if I made good wines, the best is now starting. But on top of the world. Thanks.
I'm glad to hear it, because you put us on top of the world on a regular basis with all of the wine that you make. And we've tasted a lot of it on this show, and very happily so. But it's the first time, and I hold myself purely responsible for this, that I'm encountering your sweet wine. Before we discuss it and what makes it special, it is a category, and I've said this many times on the show, that I don't think we consume enough, celebrate enough, give enough attention to. And I often have people around for dinner, and I'll pour some for them, and they'll rather hesitantly take a glass, and 30 seconds later they're asking for a refill because it's just that good. What is it about our art of dessert wine, of sweet wine, whatever you like to call it, that you think sets us apart? And what do we do to get people to enjoy it and celebrate it more?
I think I always work with sommeliers first, because sommeliers are your guy that can convince people or just put them off completely. Because when I go into a restaurant, a top restaurant, I always tell the waiters, do people drink sweet wine here? And they go, no, that's the worst category in our restaurant. And I say, okay, let's start from the beginning. When you offer my sweet Mourvedre, you never go to them and say, can we finish with a bottle of sweet wine? Because 80 or 90% of people will say no. But people were used to the Hannepoorts, the Jerepicos, the Noble Rot, I don't know, they had really big names. And those wines were overwhelming. And I think we're starting to understand a little bit, like things like Cinsault, the Grenaches, the Semillons, the Colombas, that in South Africa we've got this wealth pit of phenomenal wines that we just overlooked all the years. And I think the sweet category is one of them, because I always say to the sommeliers, first thing you do is open a bottle of wine, and I will refund it if people didn't like this. And go to them and say, can we offer you a small glass at the end of your meal or with something, a dessert style wines? People will never say no to a free glass of something. And then they will taste this and they will go, what's this? And then you explain to them what it is. And I promise you, 2 bottles later, they still drink the same wine. It's a wine that people who hate sweet wines loves it. People who love sweet wines loves it. And then I know I'm going to get in big trouble for this one. Your Tannie from very north, very high north of this country. It's her wine. You just put a straw into the bottle. You don't even pour this one. It's her favorite wine ever. And it complements so many things. What I did was, the story behind this wine is, and Greg knows the story, there's a very famous club in London, and we won't say the name, but he had a French sommelier, which was brilliant. And this guy loved my wines. And every time I go to London, it was this private gambling club with all these crazy rich people, and all the food and the drinks was included. And then they had a cheese trolley that looked like half of a table. And that would come past with some Klein Constantia, Afro Constantia, and Tukais and everything. And he always said to me, please make me a wine that would go with cheese. Okay, in my background, wine and cheese, I mean, you could still say wine with a cheese, but not wine with cheese. And you know, when you sell very well in a restaurant, you don't want to upset the buyers, you go, yes, of course I will do it. And then you walk out the door and it's like, this will never happen. So I went to London about 3-4 times a year. And this guy would ask me, so how's my wine doing? And it's like, fantastic. It's fermenting. We're creating something really interesting. And then I see him a year later and he says, so how's my wine doing? Same story, same story. Then about 3 years later, he said, do this wine exist? And I wish I could have said yes, but oh no, at that time. And I said, of course it exists. It's soon ready. Next trip, I'll bring it to you. And I literally had to get back home and start looking for something. And I found this phenomenal grape in the Swartland called Mourvedre. And when I tasted it, I knew this is what we're going to do. It's one of those sporty style wines, but it's actually, it tastes like a wine, but it smells like a port, but it can taste like a wine. And then I realized for the first time, the worst thing you can do to people is give them a crème brûlée, give them chocolate mousse, give them the best dessert in the world, but then give them a really sweet wine, which this is already sweet, and this is almost sickening sweet. And I thought I want to do something that I would drink, that I would really enjoy. And for me, that Mourvedre was the perfect thing. And then I realized the acidity has to play a big role in this wine. People love the sweetness of it, but they don't want that clawiness. They almost want more a balance of sweet and sour in this. They almost want you to, when you drink this, the sweetness has to come to the front, but then the acidity has to clean the palate. And then I started fermenting this wine, and then I realized that I have to pick this grape like incredibly ripe. So what I do is I would go into the vineyard literally at 17, 18 barley, and I would pick about 10 to 15% of the grapes, ferment them separate. That's my acidity. And then I would leave the rest till it's crazy sweet. And I would ferment that. And at the end, I would blend those two together. And then you get this beautiful balance of full sweetness, almost port, but then this fresh acidity that cuts through. And then the biggest surprise for me was when you tasted this and you tasted it with different cheese, it almost complements all cheese. My favorite cheese would be brie, camembert, and goat's cheese. But then we also found that when you serve a dessert in a top-end restaurant, give people a little bit in a glass and say compliments of the chef or whoever, and they would drink it and they would go, wow, can I get more of this? Can we buy a bottle of this? So we've converted those guys, and it's one of those weird wines that I made that I'm incredibly happy, because I think if you look at the top 10 restaurants in South Africa, this wine is, I would say, on 7 of the top 10 restaurants tasting menu, because it works with most of the desserts. It works with strawberries dipped in dark chocolate. It works with the cheese plate. And then in South Africa, what I like the best for Christmas, this is the perfect wine to have with your Christmas cake, because it's got almost all those flavors, the energy of that Christmas cake, you capture in this bottle.
Exactly that. Just before you got to it, the way that it does bring everything out of there. If I go back to London, back to Mr. Sherwood, the 3 wines that we've got on this list for next week, Greg, there is something just a little quirky about all of them. You've got a Cab Classique that features Pinotage. You've got a red blend led by Cabernet Franc and Malbec. And then you've got a dessert wine made out of Mourvèdre, of all things. Not many people who'd even think of that, let alone make it. But we've got a maverick with us this evening. And in terms of capturing the essence of a dessert wine and getting it into that space where it's complementary rather than overpowering, which some of the more saccharine ones can be, it's just another case of Ian Naudé getting it absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something difficult for him. He normally, if he makes a wine, he normally gets it right. But I love the little bit of slight eccentricities of these three wines. But they're all just absolute benchmarks for South Africa and what we do. And I'm very excited to have the Wine Tribe members taste these wines. And one of the biggest feedbacks and comebacks when people email me after we've done the show and tasted the wines is that people say, well, thank you for introducing me to something different or something new. I just wouldn't normally have bought these wines myself, but it's really expanded my horizons and opened up a new door for me. And they say the more they do that, the more adventurous they become with all their wine choices. And it just kind of opens so many more doors and windows for them into their enjoyment of food and wines. So I think we've got a great selection here. We're sending packs out this week and probably even on Monday to arrive Tuesday. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday, hopefully, for a fantastic session.
Denzel Jonathan Swartz chipping in there. I agree with you, Ian. It's important the sweet wine category gets correctly introduced to guests, and we're going to be doing that with Ian as part of the Wine Tribe and tasting all of that wine. Just before we get a final summary of the wine and how it all works from Greg, Ian, what does it mean to you, just from a very personal level, as you sit in Stellenbosch, so many years behind you in the wine industry, many years ahead of you as well, and you see your wine, the wine that you've crafted, you've conceptualized, now going out and being enjoyed by people all over the world? How do you feel when you see that happen?
Sure. Dan, that for me is the biggest compliment. That's why I think I appreciate what you guys said in the beginning. The biggest part that I don't like about the wine industry is the glamour part, because I'm a strong believer in it's all about the grapes. It's all about the workers in the vineyard. It's all about the farmers. We're a big group of people who gets and I'm the last guy who gets the privilege to put it in that bottle. I think it's for me the biggest thing. Compliment always when people also say, I never expected this could come from South Africa. And it's like, boy, there's a big surprise for you. There's phenomenal wines coming out. And especially with this one, people would say, I only drink Tokai. I don't drink anything else. And then they drink this and they go, wow, this is so different that I actually enjoy this. Huge compliment when you see that your hard work gets recognized overseas, but more important, that South African category gets more recognition.
Well, you are one of the many champions who has helped us to find our way into that space. So, Ian, thank you, not just for tonight and for great wine, but also thank you for making time for us next week. So, Ian will be part of our all-star lineup with the South African Wine Tribe as we sample that dessert wine, sample the bubbles, and sample the red blend from Bruwer Raats. Greg, just to confirm, if you want to get involved, it's £55, gets you all these three wines. I think you've got the price wrong, but I know nobody will complain. You can't possibly get three wines as good for 55 quid. That includes delivery, and it includes myself, Greg, Joe, as well as our three wine luminaries, and we'll be chatting to all of them next week. So just send your details to Greg and get your orders in. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. Just they can email me at greg@handfit.net, and you will get. We'll contact you, and we'll get your pack arranged and ready for sending out, and it comes to you overnight. So all very simple. You get your tasting notes with it, and then you just have to listen to us drone on about it for a while next week. But it's actually great. All three of these wines. you can crack, and you can stop at them and drink them over a couple of days, So stick the bubbles back in the fridge, have a bit of champagne breakfast, and the Mourvèdre, that'll go for a while. So all very nice. But I'm sure they're also delicious. I don't think they'll last too long, and a lot of people are working their way towards Christmas now. It's the perfect trio. So do get in touch.
Well, there we go. You can see the email address there, greg@hanford.net, and Greg will sort out all the details for you. It's £55, and this is England, Scotland, Wales, sadly not Ireland or Northern Ireland. So I know my mum's been trying to be part of it for ages, but when Greg finally gets around to opening a shop in Belfast, we'll get you sorted out. But if you're in England, if you're in Scotland, or if you're in Wales, it is free delivery. £55. You get the Mourvèdre-based dessert wine from Raats and Naudé. You get the Cab Franc led blend from Bruwer Raats, and you get that lovely bottle of sparkles from Simonsig. And we'll have all three winemakers. It is 7 p.m. UK time next Wednesday. That is the 9th of December. And Greg, myself, Joe, and the Wines of South Africa team really look forward to hosting you. A final comment there from Gonim Tizwa. You're a very innovative winemaker, Ian. Great stuff. I don't think Greg or I would even think of disagreeing with that particular sentiment. Greg, thank you both for being on the show and for wearing something that's almost passable, which makes a very pleasant change. We look forward to seeing you next week. And there'll be a very limited number of people who are with us on that call. So for the greater audience we have, thank you again for everything you've done for South African wine this year. We've had a tough year at home. It's been offset to a considerable degree by sales abroad, led by the UK, and you've been a real catalyst for that. So thanks for being such a champion. And yeah, hopefully we just get to drink some wine together sometime soon.
Absolutely. I hope so, Dan. I'm looking forward to visiting South Africa again soon, hopefully end of the year or early next year, so hopefully be back soon.
All right. Well, we'll see you online next week with the South African Wine Tribe that has its third outing. Remember, an email to greg@hanford.net, and those three wines will be shipped to you, £55, and you'll get that link for a very special private wine tasting with myself, with Greg, and with our representatives from three terrific wine estates making three terrific wines. That does it for today. A big thank you for joining us on Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. Remember, if you are looking for terrific South African wine, you can't go wrong with the broader Pick n Pay seller, either in-store or online. You just need to be a member of the Wine Club. And remember, get you 3 times the Smart Shopper points, 20% off 10 different wines each month. There's also a deal on a case, a deal on a Magnum. And if you're buying online, 6 bottles or more gets you free delivery. So go and have a look. They do have a wonderful selection from the more entry-level stuff right up to the very best of South African wine. That does it for today. Next week, we've got all manner of things happening on the show. We'll be chatting to John Smith up at the Earth Lodge at Sabi Sands and getting his wine story. We'll be chatting to Johan Malan, the winemaker of the year at Simonsig. I think that is next Thursday. And we'll also be looking to celebrate some wine from De Grendel as they push out a wonderful competition with our friends at Pick n Pay. But that does me for today. Thank you all very much for joining us. Happy drinking, happy shopping. See you next Wednesday if you're a member of the South African Wine Club over in the UK. And see you at 5 p.m. on Monday for our next live edition of Dan Really Likes Wine. Big thank you to Charles. Big thank you to Bruwer, big thank you to Ian, and a special thank you to Greg Sherwood, and in absence to Joe and the team from Wines of South Africa. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.